Good evening, everybody. Welcome back to the Walk to Emmaus podcast, where we talk about our walk with Christ and Christian living. Today with us is me, Tosin, and
hi, I'm Fumi.
Hello, I'm Barnabas.
Hello, I'm Fumibi.
And today we'll be talking about Halloween. So, what are your thoughts and experiences with Halloween? You guys don't go at once. No, you start. Take the floor.
I guess I was first introduced to Halloween when I first moved to America around age 6.
Mm-hmm.
My experience with Halloween, I believe my family, we celebrated it in the traditional way of going trick-or-treating and everything one time.
Mm-hmm.
And then after that, for reasons not clear to me, we didn't continue to celebrate it. But then I think when I was a little bit older, it became a time when we would actually go to church and have a festival with candy and games and that sort of thing. So that was how I celebrated it growing up personally.
For me, well, I'll just say something briefly because I've not experienced my environment or my society celebrating Halloween because I was born and raised up in Africa. So, but what I hear about Halloween is witchcraft. So that's that's the picture I had for Halloween and what they said.
Yeah, and that's actually something that a lot of people don't know. I mean, a lot of people just think of it as, oh, it's fun, wear costumes, ask for candy. But there are some people who actually do some pretty dark stuff on that day.
Yeah. My Halloween experiences, I also grew up in Africa. By Africa, part of it, Nigeria. And we don't have Halloween, no one, that's not a thing. But we do have movies that we watch, and that was where I got my ideas of Halloween from, just, American movies. And what you read, or your Goosebumps books and all that. So it was more, it's a party and celebrating, although Goosebumps is more
kind of like Harry Potter.
Yeah, but kind of like that, but on a childish, not as intense in terms of plot, but just So, would you allow your kids to celebrate Halloween, and how?
Not the way it's celebrated now. I mean, other than there's safety concerns, of course, like going door to door.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think as a Christian, we're called to not be conformed to the world, right? But be transformed by the renewal of our mind. So, we really have to be thoughtful about, what's behind the holiday, and hopefully later on we'll get into that.
Yes,
and
so
how we
I
can,
just want that.
yeah, no worries, and how we can use the holiday to glorify God, right? So
Maybe that is a good segue to talk about the history, because maybe if anyone knows about the history of Halloween, you can kind of share, because I guess we got into talking about how there's occult practices, and I guess can we know how things progressed there and how we got there?
yeah, it's a long, complicated history. So there are two main holidays that Halloween kind of sprung up from. So there's a Catholic holiday that was back in the 7th centuries, right? And it was the day before All Saints' Day, where they celebrated the martyrs, those who were killed for their faith. So it was called Hallowed Eve.
Yeah.
So when you shorten it in their dialect, it's Halloween. So the day before the holy day of celebrating the saints. So that's one branch. But then there's another pagan holiday.
The Celts, Ireland.
Yeah, so in the Irish area, they had a pagan holiday that may have even been earlier than the Catholic holiday, 2,000 years ago. That's probably when it started, where they, I think a little bit.
So from what little I've read, it was originally to signify the beginning of winter. Hey, winter is coming, till your land and do what you need to do and celebrate as well. Our dead's spirits come into us, light the fire to keep everyone warm, wear your mask so evil spirits don't recognize you kind of thing is what I've read. And that was way before All Saints, even All Saints Day.
Yeah, so they did some sort of like good fortune, but being pagan, it happened.
And, over time, it also, humans will add their own things and it changes, becomes something else.
Yeah, so I know when the Catholic Church was the main, power in Europe, right? They wanted to contend with that holiday, the Irish holiday, the pagan holiday. And so since, the two holidays have the theme of, celebrating the dead in some way, right? They try to foreshadow the pagan holiday with Halloween, right? So for a long time, it had, I guess, pure, I guess, motives to honor those who died for their faith. But then, as time went on, it became more about, celebrating the dead in a kind of weird way.
Yeah, and in link to that, wearing costumes, because I did some researches when I was hearing about Halloween coming up October. So like back in those days, like the people believe that some evil spirit comes to to this physical world and for torment her. So they do wear costumes to ward off those evil spirits, so that when as they worn those costumes, those evil spirits will think they are part of them, so they won't bother to torment them. Yeah. So and they even offer some food to appease those evil spirit or dead spirit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
From the Britannica article I read, apparently All Saints Day was in May. It was
Okay.
originally May,
Yeah,
then moved to November to be closer, and then.
So that would compete with the pagan holiday.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Was there any clash? What was the clash?
I guess the Catholic Church wanted to compete with that pagan holiday, so they moved the date so it's closer to fall season. But we see, it's more of a pagan holiday now, than a spiritual one. So,
I see what you mean.
yeah. So like as Christians, like how do we redeem, the holiday, Halloween? Like, do we celebrate it some way, or what can we do with it, knowing that we're Christian and we don't necessarily believe?
Sorry, I had a thought.
Yeah.
Back to something you said, more of a pagan holiday than Christian now. I mean, from my little experience so far, although I would definitely agree it's not Christian, I think it also varies for people, because the pagan part, I feel like we're in a world today where for you to be really involved in that side of the world, paganism, occult, and I guess dark stuff, it's like, it's different now. It's like a psyche. Now it's more circular than pagan.
Okay, so yeah, I guess that when you mentioned that, it makes me think, is there a big distinction between the word secular and the word pagan? Like, we don't use the word pagan that much. It kind of feels kind of outdated, but I think maybe Barnabas, maybe he meant it in terms of secular. It's a secular holiday.
Yeah, it's not secular holiday.
It's not religious at all.
Yeah.
When you say pagan, I think
You
carry calabash, goat head.
I mean, to be fair, some people do still do that type of stuff during Halloween, but I mean the main form of it is secular. Just making about candy, costumes, things like that.
I don't have an answer to your question, but I will say that I think that it's smart or strategic, like, of the Catholic Church to attempt to overshadow like a pagan holiday. Like, instead of like, okay, let's just sit in our houses and do nothing on this day. Like, okay, how about we bring a holiday that we're already celebrating and see if we can kind of make this other holiday extinct. I just think it's smart and strategic. So I don't have an answer for the question of like, how should we celebrate it? But maybe maybe the creative things that we think about could be along those same lines,
Yeah.
how to redeem it.
And yeah, they're probably trying to redeem, like buy it back from, the world and make it a Christian thing, right?
Yeah, I guess like in the original way that it was celebrated, it was more of like a Catholic thing, and I think the Catholics put a bit of a different value on saints, and what is a saint is different than someone who's Protestant, and then a value on, I don't know if some people could even consider it worshiping of the dead compared to Protestants. So I'm not quite sure.
Yeah. It's a fine line,
Yeah.
touchy.
I know that Apostle Paul, he he had a habit of using, secular culture to point back to God, right? To make a point. So, like for example, in Acts chapter 17, verse 28, he quotes one of the poets of Athens, I believe, and he says, "For, quote, in him we live, move, and have our being, as even some of your own poets have said, for we are indeed his offspring." So they worshipped a lot of gods, and they wanted to make sure they got all of the gods, right? So they had this unknown God, right? So they had this,
like
pagan,
a catch-all.
yeah, and then he used, their quotes about that God, right, to point back to, the real God, our Heavenly Father, that in him we live, move, and have our being. So I think, there could be ways that we can, use the ways that people celebrate it to point people back to the real God, right? Because one thing I heard is that Halloween is like the one of the days in the year where people come to you. They come to your door, right? Whenever you want to like share the gospel with people, you have to look for where people are, right? But it's a special day in that people go around and are open to treats, right? They say trick or treat, right? And like, what's the greatest treat that we could give them, right? It's the good news. Yeah, it's the good news. So that's one way, is like sharing tracts. I usually, I wasn't a huge tract person until at our church we were like tasked to just share one tract, at least one. And then at a gas station, I decided to just, I'm just standing there, the person's just standing there, let me just give this person this tract. And I mean, they were surprisingly open to it. I mean, it wasn't like a long conversation, but it made sense to them, and hopefully they read it after. So it could be like a day where we just, whoever comes, we may give them some candy and a tract. So
there's a testimony of that tract being given to someone. I'm not actually drifting away, but there was a woman who was actually, she didn't believe in God, but when she was given the tract, she just took it and kept it somewhere. Then she was having this severe pain in the middle of the night. Then she just took the tract saying Jesus being the healer. Then she just shouted the name, "Jesus, save me." So we can see that from that tract, without being preached to, a message got to her. Then she had her deliverance immediately. Then from then, a salvation story began.
Perfect example of God actually being the one who does the work. Well, just the means, he's the one that actually touches lives and maybe.
Yeah, I love those stories about tracts, because a lot of times you're like, this isn't making a difference. But then, I don't know, for every 100 that you give out, you never know, 10, one, even one might make a difference, and that's worth it, because a soul is worth more than all the world. So you mentioned something about your church using it as
I was thinking so this is a way that we as adults, like what you're sharing is a way that we as adults can redeem Halloween, if you will. But what about our kids who are in situations and environments where they see all their friends celebrating it? You have to have conversations about, why can't I celebrate it at all? Or what if I did this? So how can should we try to celebrate in any way with our kids, or it's like, no, just throw it to the wayside?
And how can you have that conversation? How do you go about that conversation? Because it will be all single or young adults watching this, even moms and dads. How are we going to have this conversation with our kids?
Honestly, I think what kids want, for Halloween is a candy and, you know, wear costumes, right? I mean, if you can make some...
Jesus's?
Everyone is Jesus.
Oh, yeah, make them wear
You only
Jesus
get to be
costumes.
Jesus.
Either Jesus or Apostle Paul. You choose one. Yeah, maybe you can like make a gathering in your home with like some of their friends to invite their friends.
Yeah.
And they can have like some games and wear appropriate, I don't know.
Like what your church
costumes.
did, you know,
Yeah.
what you had growing up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that way, you know, they're not saying, I want to go over to Johnny's house, you know, and he's going to be trick-or-treating, right? Why not invite Johnny over to my house, right? Or your house where you know what, you have some control over how they celebrate it instead of, you know, just letting them follow their friends. That way, you know, it's a win-win. They feel like they don't miss out as much.
Yeah.
You get to control how they spend their time. And
It's
so-
more of a party for them.
Yeah.
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 And this year specifically, Halloween is going to be like 40 degrees
Yeah.
outside
So-
and dark. So I'm sure,
Yeah.
you know,
You
who
should
doesn't
be
want to be
trick-or-treating.
indoors?
Yeah. Yeah.
What about the enlightenment, like sitting them down,
Yes,
And-
how would you have that conversation?
forming them?
I haven't gotten to that point yet. My child is still, he's like really young, so, I mean, what I hear about parenting is that at certain times you just have to, you know, set the boundaries and say, I'm the parent, this is what's gonna happen. And it helps to give good reasons. They may not understand it now, but that's you know, part of life is, you know, you learn to obey or follow and then you understand it later. So it may be uncomfortable as a parent, you know, the backlash you may face when they're like, but I want to do this. But, you know, just stay strong and
Yeah.
keep to your convictions, you know.
Yeah, and I think that that's part of why like having the alternatives are important. So it's like, oh, you had to be outside in 40-degree weather knocking on random people's door who didn't open their doors versus like, oh, I got to go to church and we played games, we ate candy, we had
Hot
fun.
chocolate.
So it's not like this, oh, I really missed out on the
Yeah.
cold weather.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And I hear it's better to explain to your kids
Yeah.
your reasons behind your actions. So, you know, critical thinking as well as them not just obeying to obey and to just, you know, to give
Because
them.
temptation can come and they may not have
reason.
that
Yeah.
reason to
Yeah.
cling on to, like, why shouldn't I do this?
Yeah.
And when they see the repercussion, they're going to get it. So
Yeah.
that's why I believe good reason should come around with it. Yeah, I had a story that like the founder of the Satanic Bible, the founder of
There's
I've
a
never heard of
Satanic
that.
Bible?
yeah, I was actually surprised when I heard it. Like the founder of the Satanic Church said that he's actually glad and happy that the Christian parents are allowing their children to celebrate or worship the devil once a year. I was like, wow.
We're not saying celebrate Halloween. We're looking for alternatives as Christians to how to redeem it, how to buy back, how to use what's already being celebrated to glorify God. So, yeah, let God lead you in that, and hopefully you can take some of the advices that we're given to the time. All right. So, this is where we tell them to like, subscribe, and share.